Please welcome Darius Kazemi.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, there we go. It's an honor to be here today talking to my fellow creators. I'm really excited to tell you the story of how I got to where I am today. Ever since I was a child, I wanted to win the lottery. I think it started when I would visit my grandmother as a child. Every night at 6 o'clock, we watched Action News on WPVI Channel 6. We weren't really watching for the news. At 6:59, the Pennsylvania Lottery daily number was drawn, and we'd hold our breath until that first little ping pong ball came out of its pneumatic tube. She never won, but it gave me hope, and it was my strongest memory of the strongest woman I knew. Needless to say, the lottery soon became an all-consuming passion. In every spare moment I had, I doodle numbers in notebooks, the margins of pages, wherever else I could think. This is my life. That passion stayed with me through my teen years and into my college days. By the time I hit my early 20s, I set aside every day to buy a lottery ticket and improve my craft. Although I didn't see it as improving my craft, really what the lottery had become for me was a way of processing what happened to me every day. When I got into a fender bender, I used the numbers from the other guy's license plate. If I met a girl at a bar, I'd incorporate her phone number into my work. It's very important to me. There was a period of my life where I was going through some awful medical problems, and I played the numbers that I found around me every day at the hospital, and it took an awful, isolating ordeal and provided me a way to share it with my friends and family. I didn't have a lot of success as a lottery player at first, but I kept doing it. And more importantly, I started sharing my experience on the internet with my lottery blog. It began as a daily journal of the numbers that I played, but it became so much more over time. Not only, thank you, it's a great blog. Not only did this experiment keep me active as a content creator, but it also very slowly built up a wonderful community. A community of lottery players I still talk to this very day. The most freeing thing about this blog was the feedback loop between myself and my small group of dedicated fans. I'd start to get feedback from them. Here's one great example. I'll always remember this. My mom's birthday was coming up, so I played her birthday, as you do. And one of my fans commented on the post for that day and said, "Hey, I know your mom's birthday is coming up, but have you considered mixing it up and trying your dad's birthday?" And in all my years of playing the lottery, I had never, not even once, considered playing my dad's birthday on my mom's birthday. And so we ended up with this brilliant community of lateral thinkers supporting ourselves in our lottery endeavors. At the time, none of us had made it big. We weren't well-known lottery players. None of us really knew what we were doing, but that freed us. I was so inspired by this community that I wanted to devote myself to it full time. So I gathered up some of my closest friends from that community, and I quit my day job as Executive Vice President of Portfolio Management Services at Lehman Brothers. And I used some of that nest egg that I had squirreled away. I bought a little loft on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and it became known as, simply, the Lottery Collective. I worked at the Lottery Collective for a few years. It was a 1 in a million experience. I was surrounded by the best and the brightest, and all of us were working hard on lottery permutations, studying the techniques of our heroes, and trying to live as simply as possible. And then I got my big break. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. My win is a story that's been repeated all over the place, and I'm not going to bore you with that today. This is a special crowd of fellow creators, and I owe you something a little different. A lot of people in the creative world don't like to talk numbers. Like it's a dirty secret that we're not supposed to acknowledge. And I totally understand. What will people think if you share your numbers? What will they do? But while I understand this attitude, I think it's wrong. I think it's incumbent upon me as a successful creator to share my numbers because I could not have gotten here without my blog community, the Lottery Collective, and the giants of yesteryear on whose shoulders I stand. So here we go. These are my numbers. Thank you. You're the first to see them. And as you can see, there are an awful lot of 9s and a surprising number of 3s. Now, you might not notice this at first, but 9 is 3 times 3. Now, I'm not an economist or a mathematician, so take what I'm about to say here with a grain of salt. But I think this means that there's room out there for niche numbers. I just want to be totally clear. I'm not saying that you should play a bunch of 9s and 3s the next time you play the lottery. That would be absurd. 9s and 3s worked for me, and they worked for me once, and they're probably not going to work for you. But what I am saying is get a little wild. Stretch a little. Try some 8s or a lot of 7s. Who knows? What my lottery ticket shows is that there's room in this world for all kinds of numbers, as long as you build a community around it. For the 5 years that I was full-time running my blog and participating in the Lottery Collective, I spent an average of $2 a day on lottery tickets. I ended up spending about $3 grand over the course of the experience. And as you can see, that paid off. Yeah, thank you. But what this really shows is the value of community. I had a small community of about 1,000 regular posters and fans on my blog. To a big advertising company, each one of those people is worth about 2 cents. But if you take the success of this project at $140 million and divide it by those 1,000 community members, it turns out that each of my fans is worth $140,000. This is the value of community. So to sum things up, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't. But I kept buying lottery tickets anyway and playing numbers that just appealed to me. But in addition to making things that I liked, I reached out to fellow lottery number creators and general fans of the lottery, and I ended up building a community. And so in the end, I learned the real formula for success. keep buying those lottery tickets. Keep making those connections, and you'll win the lottery too. Thank you. Now, okay, so that, thanks. So that was how I won the lottery, or as I like to call it, every talk ever given by a successful creative person. There are a few key things that I wanted to draw attention to. I was thinking of dropping the mic, but then, that seemed a little, I don't know, I was just gonna go over this. I actually wrote this talk on the flight home from XOXO last year, and I was trying to find a venue as cool as XOXO with like the same demographics and stuff, and then Andy was like, do you want to speak next year? And I was like, I already have a talk written. But it came in under, so you get this part. The first thing I want to talk about is this lottery metaphor itself. I believe that beyond a certain threshold of work that you put into your projects, success is entirely out of your hands. Conceiving of a creative project and building it, that's buying the lottery ticket. Like that's the like hard work and don't be a jerk, like kind of like, okay, you've bought your lottery ticket, great. I make what I like to call weird internet stuff, which I've recently come to accept is internet art. And I just want to show you some examples of projects that I made which had good public receptions and projects that I made that basically nobody cared about at all. Here's Miraculous Pics. This is, if you're familiar with those scummy Twitter accounts like that just like get zillions of followers and they post sort of like amazing pics or beautiful pics or whatever, and they always get the attributions wrong, or they don't attribute, or it's like, this is a picture of Hawaii, and it's like, no, that's a picture of Bali or whatever. But they get millions of retweets because they're beautiful pictures and that sort of thing. And so I was like, well, I hate these things, and so I'm going to make one that's just really wrong. And so this is a bot that just grabs random captions from those scummy accounts, and then does a Google image search and just grabs something at random and puts them on top of each other. So we get, this is a new level of cuteness, or how to kiss a boy, or why do girls text nude pics? Here's why. And this, I thought of this project on the way home from work. I got home, I made it, I pushed it online, I had dinner. It took like an hour because it was like 2 API calls to get the data and then a third API call to put it on Twitter. It was pretty easy. And this got actually a fair amount of traction. I think like TLDR wrote an article about this, and there were like a few, it got some traction. Sometimes when I talk to people, they say, oh, Miraculous Pics is like my favorite Twitter bot. And like, that's cool, that's awesome. I really like to hear that. Here's another one that took about the same amount of work. It's called Alt Universe Prompts. Get a load of that one. And what this is it goes to, it attempts to create crossover alternate universe scenario fan fiction prompts, actually pulled from Archive of Our Own, which was mentioned earlier today. And it just grabs 2 characters, and then it goes to Twitter, and it finds someone saying something aspirational, like, I wish I was in bed right now. And then it just snips that off, and then puts it next to 2 characters, and drops a heart on it, and it creates these prompts. And so we get stuff like this. We get Quinn Perkins and the 11th Doctor in a basement. That's not going to end well for the Doctor. Cigarette smoking. That one got some faves. But for mostly they're just a few people who care about this one quite deeply, but it's like the same 4 people who really like it all the time. So yeah, and so I like this one as much as I like the last one, and in fact I put more work into this. But I never know when I launch something if it's going to get picked up and really popular or what. Here's another one that I really like and makes me laugh every time it comes across my Twitter feed. This is like that champagne for my real friends, real pain for my sham friends. This actually uses wordnik, so thank you, Aaron. Wordnik gives you bigrams, so you can give it a word and then it'll give you another word that's sort of likely to appear next to it. So naked examination for my closer friends, closer examination for my naked friends. Female president for my leftist friends, leftist president for my female friends. And real housewives for my desperate dogs, desperate housewives for my real dogs. I really like this one, and no one cares. Like, no one cares. And then, like, my most popular Twitter bot came from me noticing a really lazy style of joke on Twitter that I saw repeated over and over and over again. Where like two big news items would happen, and then like people would tell the joke where they mix them up. So like, oh, there's an Apple keynote and the next Batman was announced, so let's talk about some Batman Apple joke, right? So I built two headlines, which does stuff like this. And that's 13 Kuwaiti aid-loaded trucks enter NASCAR. This one is particularly clever, so I picked a good example. But all it does is it goes to Google News. It picks headlines from two different categories. Google News does a little call out of the main sort of subject of a given headline, and I just find the subject in one, grab a subject from somewhere else, and just swap it in. So this one must have swapped like Iraq for NASCAR or something. Google to buy Syria in $3.2 billion deal. China to remain an American company. So, and I really like this one just as much as I liked all the other ones, and this one did get fairly popular. And so, I just like I don't know what happens to these things after I put them out in the wild. I buy a lot of lottery tickets. This is a list of every creative project I've released since January 2013, representing 21 months of part-time noodling around with art and technology. These are creative projects that I've put anywhere from 1 to 200 hours of work into. And what I've learned from doing over 100 projects in the last couple of years is that beyond a certain level of effort, there's basically no correlation between the amount of work you put into something and how successful it is, at least for me. These are projects that I've got significant press recognition for. That's 9 out of 112 projects. That actually lines up with the Song a Day talk from yesterday pretty nicely. And I believe that once you've made your thing and bought your lottery ticket, everything that comes after that in terms of recognition of what you've done, whether it's good reviews or money or success, is up to some kind of like combination of luck and prior privilege. And you might ask, what about marketing? What about PR? What about knowing your audience? What about making your thing better? Doesn't that help? To me, yes, it does. And that's kind of just buying the lottery ticket. Like that's all, for me, that's all part of buying the lottery ticket, depending on the scope of the project you're releasing. Let's talk about the coolest. Just for a bit. This is the most successful Kickstarter ever. $13 million for a cooler with some extra appliances attached to it. This is not a high-end design product like the Pen Type A or a fancy watch. It didn't have a slick marketing campaign. Its aesthetic is cheesy like an infomercial and not in an ironic way. So why did it succeed? Well, you might say people clearly want a party-in-a-box super cooler. It must have been the strength of the idea that carried it through. Except if you look at the Kickstarter profile of the guy who invented it, you'll find one other project that he tried to launch on Kickstarter that failed. And that project was the exact same thing 6 months earlier. Same thing. The design's a little clunkier, but it's the same idea with complete feature parity, plus even more features like a grill for some reason. So what changed? The inventor claims it's because people like coolers more in the summer than in the winter. Okay, does that account for $13 million worth of difference in the value of your idea and all that work you put in? He also said this because he had backers who carried over from the last one. all 279 of them. Now that's some community that's worth something right there. And he said the video was better, but $13 million better? Did he pay Martin Scorsese like $6 million to produce his Kickstarter video? I don't know. Perhaps an orange trapezoid is $13 million better than a gray rectangle. Regardless, I believe the inventor when he says it could have been a mix of any one of those reasons. I also think it could have been due to the single right person, maybe a TV producer at NBC, seeing a tweet about it because their flight was running late and they glanced at their phone. Maybe a butterfly flapped its wings in the rainforest. Maybe it's because billions of years ago, two distant galaxies collided, and the resulting conflagration fused particles into never-before-seen elements that got violently ejected into our part of the universe, setting in motion a chain of mysterious and unthinkable cosmic events that eventually resulted in the coolest. This may seem like fatalism. In a sense, it is. There's not much that you can control about your creative success once you've actually made the thing. And in a sense, there are two kinds of creative advice that I think you can get from creative people. The first is how to buy more lottery tickets, and the second is how to win the lottery. And I think the former can be extremely useful, and I think the latter is nonsense. And that's all I got. Thank you.